and I am 22 years old and a junior at U of L, a former foster youth and a member of many organizations such as the First Ladies Youth Leadership Council, the Voices of the Commonwealth, True of Louisville, and I've successfully completed 2 consecutive years in the Fostering Success Program. And I, like many of you, are here today as a proud advocate for Protect These Kids. At a very young age, my mother lost her life to an overdose, and I'm not sure whether it was accidental, but I tend to think that it wasn't, just because it helps me to understand why I have some of the thoughts that I have. Just 2 short years later, I lost my father to his battle with cancer he got from smoking. He was unable to receive proper treatment because he was in prison for selling drugs. During this entire time, I was living with my grandma because my family was too unstable to take care of me. I'm not sure if it was official kinship care, but either way, it didn't last. At age 13, I was stripped away from the life that I knew and thrown into foster care because of neglect, which is ironic because my time in foster care was just a series of me being neglected again by my many social workers, therapists, and foster parents. All of these people who were supposed to protect me hurt me more than my grandma ever did. I felt so lost, and I couldn't connect with anyone because they would always tell me how I felt, say I wasn't acting out or doing bad at school, so I didn't need any help or guidance. I now understand that I wasn't a priority because they literally didn't have time, since they are given such large caseloads. They could never realistically connect to each kid, when in a month they have to visit 20 to 30 of them, sometimes much more, and keep track of what each kid is going through. Because of my inability to connect with my social workers and case managers, I found it very difficult to tell them when I needed something, or when something wasn't right. When I was 18, the guy I was dating at the time connected me to these foster parents that his family were close to. We instantly connected. They expressed interest in adopting me. But after my foster mom found out, she must have said something to the social worker that wasn't true, because they threatened to take away his foster care license if he didn't stop talking to me. I was so confused and hurt, and I was having the one thing in my life that I wanted stripped away from me, again. And no social worker ever said anything to me about it. I had to find out through my boyfriend. Part of me feels like if we had some stable third party to chime in, or if fictive kin was effective at that time, it could have worked out for me, but it wasn't, so I lost the opportunity to have a loving family. I was in and out of homes that not only neglected me, but emotionally abused me as well. And one of these homes in particular, I lived at for an entire year and a half before anything was done. I was going to my case managers about it, but there was nothing that they could do. And each time I talked to someone, it made the abuse that much worse, because then my foster mom would find out that I had been telling on her and trying to get out of the home. All of these horrible homes I ended up bouncing around when the issue could have been resolved by helping my grandma figure out how to raise 2 rambunctious teens instead of stripping us away from the loving home we already had. Each time I moved, my life got less and less stable, including academically. It was hard to keep track of what I was learning in school because each school went at a different pace, and I felt like I was learning nothing in the most crucial part of my life. I had to put forth double the effort other students did just to keep my head above water, and that is still true for me today in college, because I essentially missed out on 12 years of education from bouncing around and the educational neglect that I had when I lived with my grandma. When I turned 18, I went into the independent living program, and the neglect didn't stop there. It seemed that the same issue of caseloads that were too large was an issue in the program as well. I was on the back burner for the next 3 years. So when I turned 21, I had no idea what to do. I was given a new case manager for the last few weeks of the program, and she was even worse. I asked her for help on transitioning out of the program, and she seemed irritated with me for not being prepared. I remember breaking out into tears when she said, "You're almost 21. There is no reason you should not be prepared to leave this program." But she was wrong for so many reasons. Instead of telling her, I just cried. I realized I had to do this on my own. The day I turned 21, I was on my own, and I spent the next 2 weeks homeless, including couch hopping, sleeping in my car, and even sleeping in the school's library until I was kicked out in the middle of the night. I was very fortunate to have been connected with my mentor family, the Orphan Care Alliance, who immediately took me in after hearing that I was homeless. I honestly don't know what I would do without them. They have become the missing puzzle piece that I longed for all these years, my real family. The importance of family preservation, lowering social work caseloads, and making a stable education an option for every youth cannot be overlooked. Fortunately, we have people and organizations advocating each day for youth and the issues that matter to them. I just want to end this by saying how grateful I am that organizations like TrueUp that are dedicated to helping foster youth, and for compassionate Governor, First Lady, and legislators that have open ears, open hearts, and open minds for the youth of Kentucky, and for all the people like you who advocate every day to brighten the future for the kids in this state. And now we'll hear from Dr. Terry Brooks, Executive Director of Kentucky Youth Advocates.
I'm tending to think that nobody can top Cynthia, so maybe we just say, go meet your legislator. You know, we have it is what a compliment to all of you that on snowy, cold conditions, we have to use the mezzanine to get all the folks in. So thank you so much for being here. We had some groups from Eastern Kentucky who could not make it because of the weather, and they were going to actually begin this part of the rally with songs. I can assure you, you do not want me to do that. But we are going to have a little music as a surprise, because this morning the governor had breakfast with a number of young people who are here today. And one of those folks walked in and said, I'm here to talk to my legislators about aging out in the child welfare system. And then he told me a secret, which is today is his 19th birthday. Now, I don't know about you, I did not go to the state capitol to lobby on my 19th birthday, and I think that Jamar deserves all of us giving him a little happy birthday, so would you join me? Happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you, happy birthday dear Jamar, happy birthday to you. That is what I call commitment. I want to start with just a recognition that today would not have been happening without three key groups that make Kids Count possible, and that's such an important part of how we think about policy issues. So I would ask you to join me in just a second. I'll ask all three to stand at the same time, but we wanted to especially recognize really important community partners with all of us. And those three groups are Delta Dental of Kentucky, Passport Healthcare, and Cosair Charities. Well, the timing is perfect. Many of you who have been here many years know that we always talk about sort of a metaphor or a visual picture that we want you to hold on to today. Senator Gibbons, sadly, has already heard this metaphor because he helped us with an event earlier. But the weather outside is a great reminder that there's a big difference in being a thermometer and a thermostat. I mean, a thermometer simply tells you how hot or cold it is. But a thermostat sets the climate. It would be very easy for all of us to be thermometers. We simply look at the scene, talk about tight budgets, talk about political environment, and assume that things just have to be the way they are. The challenge for you today, and as this session unfolds, is not to be a thermometer, but to be a thermostat. Set the standard, set the climate, set the environment for kids in Kentucky. You can't begin to talk about thermostats without talking about young people like Jamar, without talking about community partners like Passport, Delta, and the charities, without talking about citizen leaders and champions like yourself. But I also would suggest to you that we have some really valuable thermostats in Frankfort. One thermostat for kids, especially when you talk about child welfare, is somewhere in this midst, and I saw Eric Clark, who is Chief of Staff at the Cabinet for Health and Family Services. So, Eric, wherever you are, we appreciate that you're a thermostat for kids. We wanted to especially recognize some legislative leaders who last session produced changed climates when it came to children. I could talk to you about specific ways, specific bills that they do that, but instead I'd rather draw a broader picture for you. And all of these legislators do all of these functions, but I want to just kind of tell a story about them as groups. So if Senators Wilson and Westerfield would come up along with Secretary Tilley for just a moment. Hold on, you don't know what you're thanking for. If you look at these three gentlemen, Secretary Tilley, from the time he was a representative and now he's Justice Secretary, and Senator Westerfield, they have taken on a broad arena called juvenile justice. Senator Wilson, for years, has taken the complex and complicated world of K-12 education. And what I love about these three guys is they're inventors. They look at those arenas that are so crucial for children. They're the ones, not me, who have the biggest picture when it comes to justice for kids and education for children. And what is amazing is over the course of year after year after year, they have delivered pragmatic, palpable solutions. And those two arenas, K-12 and juvenile justice, have literally been transformed. And three of the folks absolutely responsible we can thank today are Senators Westerfield, Secretary Tilley, and Senator Wilson. So would you join me in thanking them for being champions? Senator Gibbons, why don't you come up here now? He's going to get nervous because he doesn't know what I'm going to ask about. One of the things that I most appreciate about our elected officials are those folks who ask great questions and work with you to take an idea and make it even better. I'm not sure if there's anybody in either chamber, I may be offending somebody, who does a better job of that than Senator Gibbons. The best example I will give you is that as part of Kosair Charity's Face It campaign, we began working with the General Assembly on an idea around better protecting children from abuse and neglect a couple years ago. And can I tell you that the first couple swings, the reason it didn't happen was because of Senator Gibbons. But it was because he was asking great questions. Last year, that bill did happen, and I have to tell you, it is a far better bill, a far more encompassing bill than we could have ever imagined. And Senator Gibbons is that thermostat that tells us what's possible, what questions we should anticipate, and once we answer those questions, there is no greater champion for children than David Gibbons. Senator Gibbons, thanks for what you do, and thanks for being that great question answer. now if Representative Buchner and Senator Rocky Adams will come up. They are a real challenge because it seems like each year they get an award and we have to come up with a different award for everybody because of you all. First of all, let me emphasize that both Representative Buchner and Senator Rocky Adams could fit in those other two categories. They think about policy issues in big ways. They ask great questions. But last year we had a number of measures, whether that was fictive kin around kinship, background checks to protect kids from abuse and neglect. And what they are so skilled at is working the process. I know that President Stivers probably is aware of this, but sometimes it is hard to get things through the House and Senate at the same time. And when it comes to health and welfare, Representative Buchner and Senator Rocky Adams are absolutely the best coaches that I have in terms of talk to this person, talk to that person, we need to hear it here, we need to hear it then, don't talk to me about it now. So I just want to thank you all for really specific coaching and the persistence and candor that you show. So the reason great ideas happen in their committees is because they're chairs. Will you join me in thanking them for leading? I had asked the team at KYA if they could find an item called the Big Kahuna thermostat, and they couldn't. But if I think about the Big Kahuna thermostat for kids in Kentucky, it's President Stivers. I have to tell you that every year he grants us the chance to talk to him in early summer after Blueprint Partners have begun shaping the agenda. And he gives us the most thoughtful and honest advice I could ask for. Go hard on this. Sometimes he says you got to be kidding. But he's also always thoughtful and he's always honest. And once something gets on the agenda, he helps us in ways large and small. So I could be really formal, but nowadays there are a lot of dictionaries out. It's not just the Merriam-Webster. You look and you have the Urban Dictionary, the Street Dictionary, etc. If you look up the word kahuna in those different things, big enchilada, main honcho, demand. So would you join me, and we've asked him to bring us a few remarks, would you join me in welcoming and thanking the Kahuna thermostat for kids in Kentucky, President Stivers?
Well, I'm really speechless after that. That's hard to find me after that. I've been here 22 years and I've never been described as the big enchilada, the big kahuna, whatever I just got described as. And I'll guess and take that as a compliment. It is, okay. I'm glad that at least Tim Rogers didn't get to introduce me because he was going to talk about how I danced with kids in Haiti one day. Which I'm not sure which would be more embarrassing, to dance with kids in Haiti or being called the big kahuna. But no, truly, let me tell you about Terry Brooks and this group. They do wonderful work. They do a whole lot of things. And I want to tell you why I always try to listen. Don't always say we agree. But I think every person here, Republican and Democrat, House and Senate member, will tell you that we need to work on infrastructure. I just left a few minutes ago to Marriott, where I talked to a lot of road contractors and engineers talking about actually what I call hard infrastructure, roads, bridges, things of that nature. We need that. And I think everybody here agrees that we need that type of infrastructure. Of question is how do we get it? So then I go from that type of what I call hard infrastructure to a group of people, and again, everyone here will agree we need the infrastructure. This is now what I would call the intellectual infrastructure, making sure that these young minds, these young bodies have every opportunity to be the best they can be. And again, we may not agree on the path to get to that point, but we all agree we need to get to that point. So when we look around, we have some of the most diverse discussions, some of the most animated discussions, some of the most fierce discussions about how we get from where we are to where we want to be. And truly, and I think I saw, did Morgan walk in, Morgan McGarvey? Morgan, he had to step out. I think Morgan, who on a political spectrum, we may be a little bit left, a little bit right of each other, but again, we don't disagree on where we need to go. So when you see the spirit and the wording that comes out and the emphasis and the thoughts that go into dealing with the intellectual infrastructure of these youth, that's why you see so much passion. Because we all know that it is the future of this state, the people who will be standing here and sitting here 20 years from now that will be making these decisions. So I tell you, as you look at this group, and I do appreciate all the compliments, I don't think Deborah or John will be writing that in the newspapers tomorrow, what you call me. And again, they may. You never know. But truly, I appreciate the recognition because not just for myself, but for my colleagues, both in the House and the Senate, of both parties. Because we truly do value as our first responsibility, not the infrastructure of a road or a water line or anything like that, but the infrastructure that will go to develop these young minds and bodies, the intellectual infrastructure of the future. So Terry, truly, on behalf of all my colleagues, thank you for what you do and the recognition you give us.
He's not out of the woods yet because Tim Rogers, who runs the Elgin Foundation, wanted to do a little bit of a reflection, and I think also one of the president's constituents would like to say something as well. So, Tim, you want to start, and then we'll turn it over, and after all these folks finish, then you can sit down. Okay.
I'll be brief. It is a privilege to say a few words on behalf of President Stivers, who I've always found to be a great champion for children, and a unique perspective I bring is I actually first met President Stivers when I myself was a child. Little League Baseball, you know. My 12-year-old baseball team, and I learned something about President Stivers back then. Whenever he sees an opportunity and thinks he has something to offer, he gets involved. And he saw our Little League Baseball team, and he thought he had something to offer because his Little League Baseball team won the state tournament when he was in the league. So he came and helped coach our Little League team. And it was the first time ever that our team from our county had even made the state tournament. And with Robert's help, we even made the state finals where we lost to St. Matthews in the championship game. And he has reminded me several times through the years that his team won the state championship and my team finished runner-up, which I then have to remind him he probably had better coaching than what I had. As I said, it's a great privilege to share this word. But what I experienced from him as a child, I've been able to experience into adulthood as well. Many years later, I got to pastor the church where Robert attends. Spent 10 years at that church and was able to consistently see his care and concern for kids, for his kids, for my kids, for Clay County kids, for Eastern Kentucky kids, Bluegrass kids. It has been consistent through the years that he's just been a great champion. And I did ask him if he was okay with me sharing that story. I've even seen him when we were off the grid, no cameras around, no interviewers. In fact, we're hoping there were no cameras because we were in a rural village in Haiti on a mission trip one time when some of the kids came up to us and said, will you guys participate in a dance competition? And I've seen the big kahuna in a dance competition in a Haitian village. And, you know, seeing him in all the different perspectives that I have just been able to consistently say, this man is a champion for kids. His caring concern he brings every day in his leadership position here. And the Bluegrass is very blessed and fortunate to have him.
Future constituent of the Senator Stivers, I would like to thank him from the bottom of my heart for being a champion of children, not only in Knox County, but for the kids throughout the whole entire state of Kentucky. Thank you for what you do. And now we would like to welcome some of Kentucky's youngest advocates, the kids from Southside Christian Child Care.
It looks like that Tim Rogers had left a note and indicated that a donation to the Elgin Foundation for $100 gets you one picture of President Stivers in the dance contest.
How much for $500?
We are so honored that the governor and the first lady are joining us today. First of all, I just want to publicly thank Mrs. Bevan. 2 years ago, the First Lady heard about a speaker at Children's Advocacy Day. Some of you will remember her, Katie Akumo. And Katie brought to the forefront the importance of kinship care. She told her story in a way that galvanized the rotunda. And the First Lady heard about that and was so animated by listening to Katie's story that she took the step of forming a youth leadership council. And what I want to tell you about what the First Lady does with that council, it is not a garden party. It's not a PR issue. Instead, if you talk to Representative Lushner and Senator Rocky Adams, they'll tell you that the key voices testifying on fictive kin, on foster youth getting a driver's license last year, they frankly weren't from the cabinet, they weren't from KYA, they were representatives of the First Lady's Youth Council. She is literally preparing sort of the next generation of advocates and elected leaders on kids' issues. So, Mrs. Bevan, I really appreciate the fact that you take children's issues, but you also take children's voices so sincerely. Would you join me in thanking the First Lady for that? I think I heard, it was very difficult the other night because my University of Louisville Cardinals had a 7 o'clock tip-off against Notre Dame. There was something else going on KET at the same time. That was bad timing on somebody's part, but I
didn't go to double overtime.
I know. I DVR'd the game and listened prime time to the KET broadcast. And I think the governor may have mentioned Thomas Paine a couple times during that address. I want to mention Thomas Paine today because another quote from Thomas Paine was that a long habit of not thinking a thing wrong gives it the superficial appearance of being right. I want to say that one more time. The long habit of not thinking a thing wrong gives it a significant appearance of being right. We know that the time in Kentucky has come for us to clearly say that though child abuse has long been here, it is no longer right that 20,000 kids a year are sexually, emotionally, and physically abused. We know that while poverty has plagued Kentucky for generations, for the first time ever, more than 1 in 4 children in Kentucky live in poverty. And we know that we can't have the habit of thinking that that's all right. We know that less than 1 in 3 fourth graders in Kentucky read at minimal national proficiency standards. We no longer can have the superficial belief that that is okay. There is movement in Kentucky in child welfare, in child abuse, in juvenile justice, in education reform to make sure that we right things that have been wrong. And the one thing I can tell you is that you may or you may not agree with Governor Bevin on all issues. But when it comes to kids and when it comes to families, I think we have a governor around whom we can support. Governor Bevin, thanks for being here. I'd invite you up to have a conversation.
There are very few things. We've been gathering on this day in this Capitol for, I guess this is 14 years now. Remarkable. There's very few things that pack this place out, like the topic of how we address child welfare and child advocacy in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And I too want to thank my wife, the First Lady, Glenna Bevin, for the work that she has done. She has a heart for this, a passion for this. And with 9 children, 5 born to us, 4 adopted into our home, she certainly has a wealth of experience on this front. I tell some people I have 9 children, she has 10 because she has to include me in the mix. And that's really not a joke, actually. It's kind of true for her, sadly. But the bottom line is she brings a wealth of experience personally to this, but a passion for this. And as Terry noted, this is something that this cuts across any political or ideological spectrum. I mean, is there anything more precious than what we just witnessed here? And just even the crescendo and the way it built up. I mean, at first the clapping was like, all right, the stamping was a little more fun, and by the time you were jumping, there was just a lot of joy there. And this is really a passion of mine as well. I want to see us get this right. And while I think most of us are going to go out of here, I will say, to pick up on what you said, I just can't get out of my mind now the idea of Robert Cyrus at the dance contest, and that's a little disturbing, actually, but that's a whole other thing. I'm supposed to be talking about other things, and that's what I'm dwelling on here. But yes, exactly. As it relates to these children, we've given a lot of talk to this for a lot of years, and a lot of good effort has been made by a lot of good people. And yet it seems at best that we've gone sideways, sometimes backwards. And we are going to make forward progress. It's as simple as that. We are going to start making forward progress. And it's a function of taking care of the most vulnerable in our society. You see this in the budget that I have proposed. I would encourage, there are advocates here from all sides of the spectrum. I would encourage you to support your legislators, to support the dollars that we have allocated to addressing the needs in our community. Things from victim kin to adoption and foster care to the whole 9 yards. To the social workers, the people that are interceding on behalf of these children in the homes and with the families. We have got to do a better job, and we will. I just thank you for the opportunity to be one small piece of that puzzle. I thank those of you who've been at this for years and years and years and years, long before I was involved in a position of influence on this front. Thank you for the heart that you have. Thanks to all of you who've taken the time to just be here. I mean, literally on every level, all the way up and down. Thank you for being here, for listening. Be advocates. We owe it to these children. We have failed too many for too long. And I'm encouraged by the stories of young people, young men and women. Where's Jamar right now? Jamar in here? He's there's one of these. He's meeting with his representative. Where he is? He's up here. There's Jamar. This young man up here in the back, right up there, waving to us. Today is his 19th birthday. You know, this is not really what we intended to do, but I think we should sing happy birthday to him. His name is Jamar, and here we go. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Mama. Happy birthday to you. Jamar is a young man who turns 19 years old today. He has aged out of foster care. He's trying to stay engaged with the state. He's trying to find resources that will help him find a place, because when a young person who is 18 years old or older ages out, there is nowhere for them to go. They have no family. They have no fallback. They have no recourse. And this is a young man who's trying to make his way the right way. And we owe it to people like him and to so many others that are trying to take advantage of what we have to offer as a state. So thank you for what you're doing to help us with it. Thank you again to my wife and to every single agency that is here trying to advocate on behalf of youth. We are going to fix this, and we're going to become a model for America. Kentucky will lead the way. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Before we get away, we have some other elected leaders who have joined us. I think President Stivers mentioned Senator McGarvey is somewhere here. Additionally, we want to thank Representative Susan Western, Representative Melinda Prunty, Representative David Hale, and Representative Walker Thomas for joining us today. So could you join me in thanking them for being here? Just hang in. This is the most boring part, but I've been told by my colleagues that I need to give you some quick reminders. Then we're going to wrap up with some young people and send you on your way. First of all, we want to stress that the Blueprint information stations, several of you have asked that we have sort of prep stations before you begin to meet with your legislators. That is in room 113 and will be from 11 to 12. So if you need a tutorial on a particular issue, feel free to stop by there. My staff will not let me have a Twitter account. I don't know why, but so I'm only reading this. It says post on social media. The hashtags are printed inside your Blueprint Children's Advocacy Day folder. So for those of you who know what that means, go do it. Folders have lots of information. So many of you ask about where can I find a legislator, what committees are meeting. That should be filled in your folder. However, we do have a resource table that is right outside the cafeteria. So if you're kind of stumped as to what to do, stop by there. Finally, we have young people from all over Kentucky who have participated in decorating the tunnel with their vision of what they want Kentucky to be. I would encourage you to just take a walk through that tunnel and embrace some of the messages. Before we end up, again, thank you so much for all of you, for all that you do, for all the kids. I would just, again, challenge you to remember we have a chance to be thermostats not kilometers. So let's end this with, as you all begin to leave, I think we have some more cheers. Is that right? So you're free to begin moving out, and we'll start cheering away.
Y'all ready to chill one time? Vote for